Welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Also, remember that all our segments are on audio, and you can find them on all of the local podcasts. I'm your host, plastic surgeon Dr. Bruce Hermann. With me, as always, is the wonderful Sarah.
Hi.
Hello, wonderful
how's it
Sarah.
Going?
How are you today?
Good.
In the box, we got Travis. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing good. Back off from a week's vacation, which was really nice.
Absolutely.
We did Alaska. I meant to bring a video. I have like the coolest video, not to like bore you guys with my vacation photos because I respect you guys too much for that. But I did have one really cool video. We were actually out like in the bush of Alaska. We did this like back roads Jeep thing. And we saw a live grizzly bear.
Oh, wow.
Right on.
And while I was filming this live grizzly bear, this bald eagle comes out of nowhere, like right above the bear, like right towards us. Like it was the craziest thing.
Oh, God.
I meant to like take the video and I didn't even post it on my social. Like I said when I got home, I was
really
gonna do a couple of pics or whatever, and then I just got busy.
You was like Dr. Doolittle for like 10 minutes.
It was, man. It was crazy. Well, I didn't think that we would
Just
see
need
a
an
bear.
American flag.
I know, right? There should have been an
Behind it.
American flag in it.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
But
It would have probably been like the most American picture ever.
it was pretty
Yeah.
sweet. Like I was actually pretty impressed. I was like, dang, that's actually a pretty cool video. I mean, the bear's kind of like a little bit far away, thankfully, because I'm not a big fan of bears. Like they kind of
Sure.
scare me. Like they're powerful animals. And,
Absolutely.
And but so yeah, I was like down in like this creek, and I was like, I was watching, and then this eagle comes flying up. I was like, dang, this is like all American vacation.
Can I see the impression of the eagle one more time?
Yeah, it's like
I love it.
Hey, but I'm gonna tell you guys, Alaska is a pretty cool vacation. I was a little concerned that maybe the kids wouldn't appreciate it as much, but they loved it. We did like whale watching, like in a tiny little boat, which it was so funny. So my wife's not like sporty spice, and so one of the things that we did was get into these. Have you heard of Zodiacs? So a Zodiac's basically an inflatable boat with like a super powerful motor on it that you're like out on the open ocean. And so like right before we left, I was sending her like these videos of this whale that like breached up and like smashed this boat. And she's like, why would you send me that? Why would you do that? You know we're gonna be in a small boat.
That is scary.
So we did that, and then we took another smaller boat, not quite that small, up to a glacier, which is really cool. I'd actually seen a glacier before, but before I had ever seen a glacier, I just didn't really understand what a glacier was.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys seen Game of Thrones, right? No, you guys don't watch Game of Thrones, do you? Both of y'all? Oh,
A glacier is like a big
like the
chunk
wall
of
of ice. Yeah, like
Yeah,
that big wall of ice is that's
Right.
like kind of what a glacier is. And
Yeah.
it's actually really impressive.
Did they tell you like how deep it goes down into the water and stuff?
No, that's a great question. I wish I would have thought to ask that. I mean, the thing was massive. I'll
Because
have
they're
to.
supposed to be bigger at the
Like the
bottom.
icebergs. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
they're
come
supposed
off
to be
of
bigger
it.
at the bottom than they are.
I bet it's really, really big because they were telling us that the fjords, so they're called fjords, it's basically a valley in between two mountains with water, was like really, really, I can't remember exactly, but it was really, really deep. So I assume the glacier is as deep as that. Like
Yeah.
it's not just floating on there.
Yeah.
I hate to bore you guys. I won't I'll bring like one or two next time. I meant to do it and I just totally forgot when I was prepping last night.
Nah, I find it super interesting.
Yeah, cool. I'll bring a couple on the show. But Alaska's cool. If you guys haven't been to Alaska, I think it's super awesome. It's very rural and kind of rugged, especially down where we were in like the southeastern part of it. But it was beautiful. And if you like the outdoors and stuff, like it's just amazing. So I'm in the boat. We did Norwegian cruise lines, and they were great. I've never been on a Norwegian before, and it was actually really good. So
Yeah.
So thumbs up on that. And I don't know. I don't think that they're like much more expensive than like cruises in the Caribbean.
I don't know. I'm like I said, my parents went on one. They liked
Oh,
it. So now
oh,
you're the
did they?
second person I know that really liked
Yeah,
it.
it was really cool. And like I said, the kids really loved it. In fact, both of them were like, this might be one of the best vacations we've ever taken. And I was like, oh, cool, okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous that they wouldn't like it as much, but
Good.
so anyway, yeah, Alaska was cool. I'll bring something next week. I totally forgot, but all right. Did you guys do anything good last week? Anything exciting? Same old stuff?
Nothing crazy.
Yeah.
Nothing on my end, at least.
Yeah, that's
I didn't
good.
do
I mean, I
anything.
just, I hadn't seen you guys in a little while. So I missed you
Okay.
guys.
Minute.
Want to make sure you guys are all right.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Okay,
MIA.
let's jump into some segments. So, man, I'll tell you, this first segment's pretty interesting because this is talking about breast implants and whether it's best to put them above or below the muscle, which the other word for that would be subglandular, which means above the muscle, or submuscular, which would be below. And this is something that used to be a little bit of a debate when I first started plastic surgery in the mid-2000s. Now, Sarah, I know I've asked this a million times, but you've been very upfront about the fact you've had surgery. Did they ask you about that when you went to get your surgery? Like, was there any mention of it?
Yeah, my doctor said he wouldn't do the surgery unless it was below the muscle.
Okay, that's interesting to know. I'm kind of the same way, actually. And I can't remember when you said you got yours. If you got them a long time ago.
I got them when I was like 22, and I'm 35 now.
So you got them basically around 2010. That's about when it went to being all under the muscle.
He said he said some people he would, but not for me because I was just so petite.
Yeah, and that may have been to you. Okay, I'll explain what that means. Okay, so he said for you specifically, not that he wouldn't do them. Okay, interesting. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you people what this means, because it's one thing for me to say above or below the muscle. It's another to see a picture. So throw that first picture up there, Travis, if you would. Nope.
The modern boob job.
There should be one that's a photo. That's the article. Isn't there one that's like 3 photos, Travis?
Yeah, give me just a second.
Okay. It may have gotten out of order in there. Sorry about that. It's like a picture. It's like an infographic. And anyway, what the picture is going to show is, yeah, here we go. Perfect. All right. So the one on the far left is what we call above the muscle. So obviously the yellowish tissue is breast tissue. The kind of light blue is the breast implant, and then the red is the muscle. And you see that the implant is sitting above that muscle, but in between the breast tissue and the muscle. So that would be what you call above the muscle or subglandular. The middle one is what you would call your classic submuscular or below the muscle. You see that the muscle's been lifted up, and the muscle is draping over the majority of the implant. And then the last one is the one that I really do, which I still consider to be submuscular, but it's called biplanar, because what you do in a biplanar is you actually are releasing the breast tissue off the very bottom part of that muscle so that the muscle pulls up a bit. And so I would say that the left one, the far left, is above the muscle, classic subglandular, and both of the other ones are submuscular, but one is slightly different, and I'll explain what that means. But does that make sense now when you see this? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, because it can be kind of a nebulous concept above, below the muscle, but that's what we mean there. So anyway, I saw an article in this magazine called Allure. So that's that next photo. Yeah, so you can look this up. This just came out, isn't that today? The 8th? August 8th? What is today?
Today is the 9th, actually, so it was yesterday.
Oh, it came out yesterday?
Yeah, it was yesterday.
Dude, it just came out. Yeah, I saw this yesterday. So anyway, Allure magazine, I've heard of them. So I was like, oh, okay, this might be interesting. I hated the article. There was a lot of things I didn't like about it because it really kind of pushed some things, which I'm not really big fans of. And of course, if you look hard enough, you'll find people that will basically say anything is good. And so they had these surgeons talking about this.
Yeah.
The 2 things I didn't like about it is they were kind of pushing subglandular implants, which is the main thing that we're going to talk about today. And they're also talking about the internal bra, which we really need to do a segment on that because I'm not a huge fan of that too. But I didn't want to try to combine it because
it sounds very uncomfortable.
The internal bra?
Yeah.
Just the sound of it. Have we talked about it, the internal bra?
No.
It's like using mesh on the inside of a breast.
You have.
Yeah, we haven't really done a full segment on it, and we need to do that. We'll probably do that next week.
We have talked about that.
But I want to mostly talk about that they were really kind of pushing subglandular, meaning above the muscle, breast implant placement. And as I said, when I was in plastic surgery training, so this is 2007, at that point in time, it was still kind of up for debate whether you put them below the muscle or above. I would say the majority of people were doing below the muscle, but at least was debated. And at the time, and I was like a very young plastic surgeon at that point, obviously because I was still in training, I kind of gravitated towards below the muscle. And I guess I'll tell you why. Let's talk about the advantages, or what they say the advantages of doing above or below. So they say that the advantages of doing subglandular or above the muscle is that there's less pain in surgery, which that would make sense. You're not like lifting a muscle up, which when you operate on muscles, that does tend to cause more pain.
Yeah, I remember being pretty sore.
Do you? That's interesting. Okay, we'll talk about that. And then the other thing is that when you do above the muscle, there is at least reportedly less deformity of the breast with chest animation. So like, for example, if you were, exercising your chest, there would be less movement of the implants if it's above the muscle. So those are the stated advantages. The stated advantage of going below the muscle is There's better coverage of the implant, which is good because the implant can be visible if you don't have enough tissue over it, which makes it look very artificial very quick. And the other thing is that if you go below, there's no concern about tissue thickness, which goes back to what your surgeon told you. When your surgeon told you that you were too petite to do above the muscle, there's a pinch test that you do on the breast tissue. And I remember this back from the 2000s whenever we used to evaluate people to see if they were or were not candidates. If you can't pinch at least 2 centimeters of breast tissue and you don't have enough tissue to cover the implant, and doing it above the muscle is a bad idea for that person. So by doing it below, you don't have to worry about that because, you know, you might pinch people and if like they're like, well, they're 1.75, do you like, you know, tell them no or whatever. And so anyway, as a fellow, I gravitated towards doing submuscular implants because they were more popular at the time. You got better coverage of the implant. I really felt like the post-op pain thing was a non-factor. You know, I know we've talked about breast implant surgery and the recovery. I find it to be one of the easiest recoveries of any surgery I do. I mean, a lot of our patients that do breast augs will do them on Friday and be back to work on Monday. I mean, it's hard to argue that a surgery where you can go back to work in, you know, 3 days is so sore that you have to change it up, which if there was no downsides to it, I might be, you know, amenable to that, but there are downsides. And as far as the animation deformity, that purely is a technique thing. If you do a biplanar dissection, or even not a biplanar, but just do enough dissection of the muscle, I've had like 0 patients come back in 15 years complaining of animation deformity, and I've done like over 1,000 augmentations. What
does that mean?
So animation deformity, have you ever seen the video of a woman with breast implants and they flex their chest and the implants like rise up like really unnaturally? Have you ever seen that?
No.
I assume it's not something you have an issue with then, because you don't even know what I'm talking about. Okay, that means that your surgeon that means your surgeon did a good job. Like there should not be animation deformity. If you're doing submuscular implants and your patients are getting animation deformity, you're not doing it correctly. Period. I mean, because people who do lots of implants like myself, obviously your surgeon that did yours, there's a way to do submuscular implants where animation deformity is not an issue. And so like that automatically should be stricken from the reasons that you would do above the muscle. I mean, because you can do them below and still have it be done right. And it's all about the dissection. If you don't dissect the muscle enough, then yeah, what happens is if you imagine the implant here and your muscle here, like the muscle can like catch that implant and lift it up.
Yeah.
But if the muscle is over the top, like go back to that video or that picture, Travis, that I showed, the very first one that we had trouble finding at first. Yeah, right. So if you look at that middle picture and you imagine that muscle pulling that implant, you can imagine that muscle might lift the implant up, right? Because it's kind of hooked underneath it. But when you look at the one on the right, where the muscle is more like on the top of it, that muscle can slide over it and the implant's not going to move as much. Does it make sense looking at the picture?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, you know, one of the big reasons, the 2 big reasons that people say, oh, you know, you need to do subglandular above the muscle is less pain and recovery. Well, I mean, my patients tell me that I would say 90% of my patients say this is much, much easier than I expected and it's an easy recovery. And then the animation deformity is not an issue. So I never really saw the benefits of doing above the muscle, subglandular, and there's definitely downsides. And what ended up happening to kind of end the debate in the 2000s is there were some research papers that came out kind of in the late 2000s that showed if you look at submuscular versus subglandular, meaning below the muscle or above the muscle, there was a higher rate of capsular contracture, which is the #1 risk of breast implant surgery, is capsular contracture. There's a higher rate if you put it above the muscle versus below. And it wasn't just one paper that said that, it was multiple papers. And when those papers kind of came out and people saw them, subglandular or above the muscle implants basically faded away. And I'm a little surprised in 2010 that your surgeon, you know, maybe even suggested it to you, because when I started in 2010, I was like, yeah, I'm not doing any more above the muscle. There's not really a good reason to do them, and there's definitely downsides. And another one of the risks that is out there is the risk of the implant getting out of position, which is higher if you don't put it below the muscle, especially even towards the middle. And there's a paper, I didn't want to pull like 50 papers, but I pulled like one big paper. Throw up that last clip, yeah. So this is a paper fairly recent, it's from 2017, I believe. And this looked at a ton of patients. I think it was like 18,000 patients that had breast implants. And they found that the adjusted relative risk, which basically means how much more likely is a complication going to happen, is 2.9 times higher to get capsular contracture if you have above the muscle or subglandular versus below the muscle. That's basically three times the risk of the most common complication of breast augmentation surgery if you put it above versus below. And for me, it's like, for what benefit?
Yeah.
I mean,
Post-surgery for 3 days being a little bit more comfortable.
yeah, I mean, to me, I
sounds
just
like
don't see it. Like, and I don't think it's crazy. I mean, if people are out there doing, above the muscle implants, I don't think it's crazy you're doing it, but my question is why? Like, why are you doing it?
Isn't it, I feel like the ones that are above the muscle would be more for like those really obnoxiously large implants that people sometimes get. Can you even put like
No,
really
I
big
would say that
implants underneath?
if you're going with bigger implants, you definitely want to put it below the muscle.
But then how does it fit? You just have to like.
Because the muscle the muscle is almost imagine like it's a piece of cloth. Like muscle,
Okay.
it's like a thin layer. Like your chest muscle is, I mean, it depends. Like obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to have like some, big old steak looking pec muscles, but like the average pec muscle is something like this.
Okay.
It's not big at all, especially in women. I mean, some women are that work out a lot. I'll go in there like, oh dang, this girl's got like a pretty big pec muscle, but in general, it's pretty thin, so it lifts up very, very easy. So, that's not really a factor. So I mean, just to kind of summarize, like I myself these days, I only do below the muscle. To me, there's no real advantage of going above. The whole thing about being less pain is a non-factor because it's really like breast augmentation surgery in general is a very easy recovery surgery. And animation deformity shouldn't be an issue. If you're getting animation deformity from doing submuscular implants, you're doing them wrong. Now that doesn't mean that you won't see like a tiny bit of movement. I mean, if somebody flexes really hard, like the most you used to see is the breast just kind of tense, but it doesn't look unnatural. Like animation deformity to me is when the breasts like are lifting. You can find videos out there. I'll have to bring one. I'm surprised you haven't seen it because they're on TikTok all the time. It's like, oh, let me show you this party trick, and this girl flexes and her implant goes, vroom, vroom. Like that's just like bad work. Like there's just no other way to say it. And so, because of the two big reasons that people are touting it, like I just don't see it. I think that people that are doing it for marketing gimmicks. I mean, plastic surgery is ultra competitive, and you can set yourself apart by doing something differently. I mean, it's a way to get more business. And so I see these people doing it either they were trained by someone who really believes in this, or maybe they're just trying to be different. I personally, and like I said, I do breast surgery all the time, train with like one of the most famous breast surgeons in the world. Like I just don't see the need, and I think that I'm in the majority. I mean, I was really shocked to see that article that was talking about that above the muscle implants were making a comeback.
They probably just needed something to write about.
Huh?
It sounds like they just needed something to write about.
Yeah, and I hate to be like cynical, but I mean, academic medicine, like that's a lot of like just people like just trying to think of something to like come up with to do differently. And I think you see it when people are marketing. It's like, how can I set myself apart? And I'm going to say the same thing when we talk about the internal bra whenever we do that segment. I mean, it's just like people saying, oh, this is new and this is like better because of X, Y, and Z, and in the data, it doesn't really support that.
Yeah.
And the one thing I would say, I mean, just to be completely transparent, the one advantage I see, like in doing above the muscle versus below, would be honestly in someone like yourself who really works out a lot, because I tell my patients that do below the muscle implants, all right, for 4 weeks you can't work out. Okay, which that should be standard for any surgery. I mean, that you shouldn't really be working out until you're at least 3 or 4 weeks out because of the risk of bleeding. But at the 3 to 4 week period or 1 month period, I say, okay, you can work out, but no chest workouts, because that muscle is so strong. And if you really work out your chest muscle, it can push that implant out of position. Now, what ends up happening is after about 3 months, a layer forms around that implant. It's locked in. It's not going anywhere. So at 3 months, you can really do whatever you want. But the one advantage of doing above versus below the muscle is you wouldn't have that added time where you couldn't do chest workouts. But realistically, there's not a huge number of women that are doing that intense chest workouts.
Besides like bodybuilders.
Yeah, I mean, I assume that you probably do some chest stuff in your CrossFit.
I did yesterday.
Yeah, right. So like,
Did
if
some
you came
bench
to me, I would just be like, look, just don't do chest workouts for a couple months. I mean, it's just that simple.
Luckily, whenever I had mine done, I wasn't like working out.
Yeah, you weren't doing it that intense.
I wasn't doing CrossFit and stuff. I was still young enough to like barely work out and still look athletic still.
It's nice when that's the case, isn't it? But yeah, I just want to touch base with this. These articles like pick up steam, and then what'll happen is someone will post a TikTok about. It's like, oh, well, if you do this, above the muscle augmentation, then you can work out immediately, and your breast won't have the deformity. And then they'll show a picture of somebody that has bad deformity, and people will get in their minds like, oh, maybe this is the better way. I mean, like I said, this debate was settled like 2 decades ago, for the most part, and it's just kind of weird to see it popping back up. I mean, I thought about texting some of my friends or plastic surgeons and being like, are you seeing this? Because I imagine that they would be like, yeah, I don't know why people are doing this, but
Yeah.
But it's good to talk about. I mean, like I said, it's not crazy if you want to do above the muscle, but you definitely are opening yourself up to increased complication.
Yeah.
I mean, you just are. Like, I mean, there are, there's 1 or 2 studies out there that shows that maybe it's, that it's not that bad, but there's a ton of studies that show, yes, your risks definitely go up. And so when there's so many studies that say that your risks go up, I mean, you have to believe it.
Yeah, I agree.
Not good, nice. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's good to talk about these things, and it'd be interesting. I actually wish I could find a plastic surgeon that did a lot of above the muscles and bring them on. We could like have a debate about it.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
Plastic surgeons arguing about like technique is just like, it's like junkyard dogs, man. Like, just go at it.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a doctor thing though.